Good morning, everybody. My name is Greg. I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, I'm very grateful to be here. Thanks for allowing me to come and share. Thanks for asking me, Wendy. 2 years ago, on the 20th of July, 2014, I walked out onto the Durban beachfront from the Elangeni Hotel after a very heavy night of drinking and drugging. There was a lady upstairs who I had had a violent and abusive relationship with for the past several months prior to that. I was an emotional, mental, physical, spiritual wreck. Half my life was in a storage unit up in Howick. The other half of my life was sitting in my mother's garage in Hillcrest. And whatever else was left was sitting in my car, in my little bakkie outside North Beach. And when I walked outside the hotel that morning, I was finished. Hey? And I walked outside and my car had been stolen. Everything around me had crumbled. And that was my rock bottom. That was my experience of my rock bottom at the age of 40. You know, I'd been active since a teenager. Half my life, I've been abusing myself with drink and drugs. I'm a dual user, or was. And I had this incredible moment when I walked outside that morning on that Sunday morning. You know, to see that it had stopped, it had come to an end, and I had this incredible feeling that finally, you know, I had nowhere to go. I had nothing left. I had been, I had nothing. Everything was stolen. The car was gone. The stuff was in my old lady's place. Haley was upstairs. I couldn't go back there because we were physically abusing each other. And the only thing I could do was call my mother that morning. And I called her. And the following morning at 8 o'clock, I went into rehab. And that was the start of my recovery 2 years ago. And a couple of weeks. My life started, I'm from Joburg originally. I was born in Joburg, 1974. I grew up in the suburbs. Middle working class family. I have one sister. My mom and dad. My dad was, the interesting thing about my childhood growing up was my dad was a very heavy drinker and he had a very violent temper. He was never physically abusive towards any of us in the family, but verbally and through his drinking and that, it was quite a, interesting childhood because I didn't know any other childhood. So that was how I grew up. I grew up in a house where there was a lot of verbal abuse towards my mother and being hit with belts and this constant heavy drinking and getting drunk every night. So my relationship with my father wasn't that great. I loved him, and I always have. But I didn't grow up with that kind of nurturing aspect in the home with my father. My mom tried to fulfill the role of both parents, really. She acted as our father and our mother because he was never really at home. You know, he would be out with his mates at the pub or playing golf or on fishing weekends or whatever it was. So that was kind of what I remember growing up as a youngster. So I kind of became quite reclusive and I was I used to keep to myself quite a lot, you know. I did have friends, but I was always trying to, gain their attention or, it was, I suppose I was always trying to impress them and trying to fit in with them and trying to, be accepted because I didn't really understand myself or was able to accept myself in many ways. I had my first blackout when I must have been about 7 or 8. And it was like a silly little thing. I don't even know what caused me to do it, but I was huddled over the lawnmower in our back garden one Saturday afternoon and sniffing petrol out of the petrol tank, and I got really high from this experience. And I blacked out, and I ended up sleeping the whole afternoon in the TV room that day. It's funny how I remember that because, the program, I never remember that when I started recovery, but like over the last 2 years and doing my program and that, I've remembered certain things. Anyway, I grew up, I went to primary school from home up over there, and at the age of about 12 or 13, I had an option to go. I had to go to high school, and my folks wanted me to go to a boarding school. So they gave me like 3 options. One was in Pretoria, one was in just up the road from us in Randburg, and the other one was about 1,000 k's away down in King Williamstown near East London. So my first real decision to like start isolating myself was then. I made the decision to move away from home and go all the way down to East London, to be as far away from my family and I suppose myself at that early age. So I moved down to King Williamstown, and I started going to boarding school down there. Standard 6, it didn't take me long the first year at boarding school. I started making friends with guys that were older than me. Standard 8, Standard 9s were my best friends. I didn't really make so many friends in my own year. But interestingly enough, in Standard 6, my one friend Hilton Fortman, he became the head boy of our hostel and a very close friend of mine. He said to me that year, you're going to be one of those guys that's going to grow up and you're going to take drugs and you're going to drink and you're going to party and you know. And like I looked at him and I remember saying to him, that'll never be me. How can you say that to me? By the beginning of Standard 7, I was brewing beer in my locker at boarding school, and I was bunking out on Friday nights with other kids from that were day boarders. Instead of going to youth groups, I was bunking out with them to a place called the Oddfellows, which was a little hotel around the corner from this church that we were supposed to be going to. And they served alcohol to people that were any age. And that was when it really started for me. It was like a little beer here and a beer there, and sneaking back into the line with the rest of the students coming back to hostel. I got caught. I nearly got expelled. The hostel master decided to not tell my parents at that stage. In fact, my parents never ever found out until I came into recovery, which was 2 years ago. So, I started messing around at boarding school already. I started mixing with other kids that were in the same boat as me. I mean, my one friend was on welfare, and he was a really naughty guy, and that was how I associated. And that continued all the way up through to Standard 9 when I had to leave school because, I really messed up my chances down there. I could have done really well. I could have been a prefect. I had a lot of potential, but I kept on throwing it away. I kept on, doing silly things, that I thought were cool, and I ended up leaving at the end of Standard 9 because, I didn't want to. I did very badly in my marks as well. That was also another factor. But I just didn't want to be there anymore. So my folks brought me back up to Joburg. And I went to a co-ed school in Joburg, and I met another group of friends there. And that's when it started getting even worse. Then it was bunking out on weeknights and going to nightclubs in town in Joburg, and going to clubs on the weekend or bars on the weekend, and drinking and smoking at those in those stages, mixing the two, alcohol and marijuana. And that's kind of how it progressed. And I was one of the naughty kids at school. We would be at the edge of the field during breaks, and we would be smoking out there during breaks, and bunking school, and just being one of the cool kids that walk around down the corridors and with the first team rugby players and the cool cats. And I finished school, started working just down the road at a mall there, started making some money, and I worked at a sweet shop. And that was also when I started doing other things like stealing. I started scamming the till there on weekends, and I started making quite a bit of extra money. Obviously, the money became very useful for me because, I could go to the clubs and I could always buy drinks all the time and drugs, and I always had cash. About 3 months after I left school, I managed to put enough money together to go overseas on my own. I always did things on my own. I always wanted to be on my own. So I traveled overseas on my own. I went over to the UK. And I lasted there for about 9 months or so, till I kind of hit another rock bottom there, you could say. Scrounging all the time, trying to find money. I used to clean toilets. I stayed in hostels. And I just continued. I was going to clubs there. I was drinking. There was a heavy drinking culture in the UK. There were pubs everywhere. So, it was perfect for me. I started working at festivals, music festivals and things like that, and I kind of just started getting into a really alternative scene. And it was also when I started cooking. I started working in kitchens. I used to work used to go down the back alleys of behind restaurants and work in these dingy little kitchens, polishing plates and things like that. And that was when my passion as a chef kind of started, but in amongst all this rampant, abuse and partying. Came back to SA again at the end of '94, and I managed to get into a hotel in Joburg for an in-service training course, which was the longest kind of job and work that I've ever had. It lasted from '95 to the end of '97. It was 3 years. And during that time, I really did well. I excelled as a chef. The most amazing things happened to me. I became like one of the top chefs in the country for my age category, under the age of 25, and I represented South Africa overseas. I won a number of competitions. I really had this incredible gift and passion for cooking. And but I also I took a lot of chances. I threw away a lot of opportunities because I also got heavily into drinking and drugging, because I was working in town. Hillbrow was right around the corner, and the clubs were in town as well. So when you work as a chef, you work really long hours. It's quite an extreme profession. So my life became very extreme. It became like extreme hard work and then extreme partying. So often I would get home at 2, 3 in the morning and have to be at shift at 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning. So that's how my life went for those 3 years. And also during that time, I lost my father. He passed away at the age of 57. And I'll never know the true reason of why he passed away, but I believe that it had to do with alcohol abuse. He was finished. He was a real mess at the end. And I was staying with him up until the point 2 weeks before he died. But I was kicked out of his house those 2 weeks prior to his death, because it was a very emotional time. I was very lost. I was using a lot. I was drinking a lot, and I never really understood what was going on. And I was very selfish, I guess. I was very self-centered because everything was about me. I didn't understand what was going on, and it was tough. It was tough because I never really said goodbye to my dad, and that was our relationship. So it was a big marking point in my life as far as my inner state of being and my emotional, state and everything. And it's still something that I'm working through. I've been 20 years later. That was 1996 that he passed away. So after my dad passed away, I actually got progressively worse. The opportunities that I had through the hotel and my chefing, at the end of '97, when I qualified, I was offered an amazing job in Scotland, which I turned down because I didn't want to work. I didn't want to go and work for people anymore. I wanted to go and live my own life. I wanted to kind of find my own way. And that was when my geographicals started, they started when I was younger, but this is when they really, got going. From 1998 up until about 2008, I never stayed in one place for too long. I went back overseas. I worked in kitchens here and there. I went to Spain. I went to Thailand. I went to Wales. I traveled wherever I felt. I just went, and I would spend like the maximum of like 6-8 months in a place. I'd work and then I'd leave. And, I would carry on abusing and just carry on getting wasted all the time. And that carried on and on and on. And I got involved heavily in the trance scene and the club scene, to the point that I was working in it and I was dealing. I was just a complete little rebel. And during this whole time, my family really took a knock. My mom obviously being on her own and trying to hold the family together, and that she was always very supportive of me, and she always loved me very much. But I was never really at home. When I was at home, it was for a few days. I could have a bed, or I could get my washing done, or I could get some food, or I could fight with my mother, or just have a place to stay. It was always my safe place. I always came back home when I ran out of options, when I was on the road or where I was traveling and stuff. And the beauty of that is that like home was always there. Like it was an unconditional haven for me. My mother to this day has always loved me unconditionally. She's always supported me, but she never knew anything about my life. She was always very worried about me, but she never knew what I was doing. There were times when I would be caught at 2 o'clock in the morning by the cops in Hillbrow, or being pulled over in a roadblock or things like that, where they would either put me in the holding cells overnight, or they would actually bring me home at 2 o'clock and wake my mother up and open the can of worms, so to speak. And those were the times when I had to expose myself, or when I was exposed. But over and above that, like I got away with everything. And I thought it was a good life. I was like completely anti-establishment. I was like, I had it all under control. I knew what was going on. I knew that work was a farce. I knew that the cops were out to get us. I knew that, drinking and drugging was the way to go, because it gave me insights into the world. It made me see things. It made me understand things. It made me solve all the problems that, I thought I had. So anyway, that was my life. That was how it continued until eventually, 2008, I picked up another job. I ended up working, that was my second longest job ever, was in a strip club in Joburg, one of the biggest strip clubs in Joburg. I worked for a really hardcore boss, like a gangster kind of guy, and I was there for 2 years, and I think the only reason I stayed there for so long was because of the view, to be honest with you. It was like, I don't know why, it was such an abusive environment. I found myself in a nightclub and working like late hours, and there was a lot of like stripping and nudity and like alcohol abuse, and it was very hard on me. It actually made me leave Joburg in 2010. It was like a darkness on my soul. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I decided to leave Joburg, and I moved down to the Midlands here in Natal. And I'd made quite a bit of money at the nightclub, because it was there was good cash to be made there. And I basically just packed my bags in November 2010. I didn't have a plan. I put everything on a trailer, and I moved down to KZN here. I put stuff in a storage unit up there in Howick, and I started living in little cottages on farms around the Midlands and stuff. And my plan was I'm going to open a restaurant, and I want to be down here where guys grow their own food, and it's just a beautiful place. And that was really where the starting point of when I moved from. It was like that invisible line that I crossed from being an active user of alcohol and drugs, like partying socially, to becoming someone who started drinking out of the bottle and hiding alcohol and keeping it in my, hidden in my drawers and in my car, and that was when it really started changing for me. I would keep like a 5-liter wine next to my bed, and whenever I got up or I came back to the room from a kitchen that I was working in or something like that, I would like pour a quick glass and just down the glass and go back into work. And it was like moving from the glass to the bottle. I never really noticed the transition, but it happened. And from about 2010 to 2014, it was really hardcore. I became very reclusive. I basically, I was drinking almost every day in the beginning, and up until 2013, 2014, it became every day. I became very manipulative. I became very clever. Like, if I was going to the shop with my mom, for example, to go and buy groceries or something, the bottle store would be outside the door of the shop there, and, I would be pushing the trolley with her or something like that, and I would say to her, look, there's a few things that I've forgotten over there. You carry on pushing the trolley on the list. And I would sneak out, go and buy a nip or go and buy a half jack or something like that. And I would literally run to the bathroom, have a swig, put it in my pocket, and come back and finish the shopping. And that was how my life became. And it was hidden all over the place. And it was like this one-way ticket to. And the funny thing, I could still work. I could still do long hours every day. I was still able to work like a 12-hour day or a 13-hour day and get away with it. I wouldn't drink during the day, but I would definitely either have a sip in the morning, or I'd be buying a bottle, sneaking a bottle quickly at the end, and on my way home that bottle would be finished by the time I got home in most cases, or there would be a little bit left to have in the evening and pass out. Mix it with something to smoke a bit later and get myself into a proper spin. And that became the pattern of my life. So that all led to me meeting this woman who was a childhood sweetheart of mine in beginning of 2014, and relocating back to Joburg and trying to figure out my life and thinking that she was the answer. Meanwhile, she was as bad as I was, and we both really just destroyed each other. And that was how I ended up at that hotel on the 21st to 20th of July 2014. Recovery came into my life the following day. I went into a facility up in Hillcrest, and I was only there for 23 days, but I was finished. Hey, I knew that this was the end. I knew that I had to fix my life up. I basically had a detox for 23 days, and during that time, I did odd little things. I got up every morning to watch the sunrise, and I knew that I had destroyed my family. I knew that I had destroyed my life. And the only way I could find some kind of deliverance or some kind of peace was to just, at that stage I hadn't met the program yet. The program only came to me about a week after I came out of rehab, of that facility. And that happened through a few people. One of them in particular was a guy called Neil, who Don and I know very well. Neil was my first sponsor. I met him at my first AA meeting in Hillcrest one night. We were taken from the detox facility to a meeting there where I met Neil. And I was really scared of him, but I really wanted what he had. And when I first met him, he said to me, do as I say. Just do everything that I tell you to do starting from tonight. And I almost thought he was irritated with me. I thought he was cross with me. I thought as typical alcoholic, I always thought I had done something wrong. I always thought it was about me. And he got me onto my step 10s that night, that very first night. It was about a week after I got out, what was that week that I was leaving, or somewhere there. And that was when it started for me, I started doing my step 10s with Neil every night, and I started speaking to him every day, and he met me at a coffee shop, and he brought me the book, that green and gold book. And he showed me the steps. And I started my journey into the 12 steps of recovery using the green and gold. And for the first 6 months, that first 6 months of my recovery, it was an amazing time for me. It was a very difficult time. I did it at home. I had no job, I had no work, I had no means to support myself, so my mom allowed me to stay at her house in Hillcrest for the first 6-8 months of my recovery. She was amazing. I'm very grateful for that time. And I just embraced recovery. I just put everything into it. I started going to meetings. I was doing about 6, 7, 8 meetings a week, sometimes 8 meetings a week. I was coming down here. I started coming down here to meetings every Sunday. After a period of time. But I started getting involved. I needed to change my life. I made a conscious decision to get into the program, even though, like, I didn't know I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't know if I was worth saving. I didn't know anything. But I loved Neil. Like, I really loved his approach to me, his unconditional love to me, and the way he brought me into the program was amazing. And there were other people as well. There's another lady, Geraldine, who I'm very close with, who also has been very supportive to me over those times. And Don, of course, Neil introduced me to Don, and Neil had to go overseas, or not had to, his life changed for amazing. I mean, his recovery has just been amazing. And he moved overseas, and I met Don, and I asked Don to sponsor me, and it was in about October 2014. And we've been together ever since. And Don's helped me with the program as well, and is my mentor and guide through the 12 steps. But everything I've done outside of the facilities. I never went to the house on the hill. I never spent too long in the facility. I did the program. I've done the program on my own. I only just finished the 12 steps, actually. It took me 2 years. I finished it like 2 days before I turned 2. That's how long it's taken me to finish this program. But the journey that I've been on in this program has been quite profound, what it's done for my life. Within the first 4 months those first early months of recovery, when I started the program, honesty became a very important thing for me. Like, I knew that if I was going to come right, I had to be honest. I had to be blatantly honest about everything. I had to tell the people that I'd been working with up in Pietermaritzburg that I was an alcoholic. I had to tell them that when I was working for them that I was under the influence a lot of the time. And it was really hard for me to do that. I drove up and I told them that. I went there one day and I went and had lunch with them. And it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. But I got it off my chest, and there was like a good relief in that. But I was scared of like what they were going to think and everything. But anyway, it turned out to be probably one of the best things I've ever done. And through experiences like that, it showed me how important the honesty in this program is. Because without the honesty, like, the opportunities would never be have come what they have, or have presented themselves the way they have. About 7 months into my recovery, I got a call from these 2 people that I had worked for. And they invited me up to Pietermaritzburg, and they wanted to have lunch with me. They wanted to chat to me. And they called me up. I went up there, and I was a little bit embarrassed to see them. But, they're good people. And, they called me, and they took me to this place. It's a restaurant. It was a little restaurant next to the river in Pietermaritzburg, in the city of Maritzburg, on the edge. A really special little place. And I walked into this place, and I just looked at Con, and I said to him, Con, wow, if I had a place like this, like, I'd be so happy. It was like my dream restaurant. Like, if I had ever an opportunity for a restaurant, this would be my dream space. And he sat me down in this restaurant, and he said to me, cool, well, I just wanted to show you this place because the guys that are running this place are not renewing the lease for these tenants that have been here for the last 10 years and everything like that. And, would you like to open a restaurant? So from the year and a half of getting to know these people and completely abusing that relationship to being honest with them as I came out of recovery, all of a sudden I had this opportunity presented to me of starting a restaurant. Anyway, I went back home and, a couple more months at my mom's place. And eventually in February 2015, it all started coming together. My life changed completely. I opened a restaurant. I opened a restaurant that I'm now a 50% shareholder in. I own half of it. I run the business. We are employing 23 staff. In the last year, I've managed to buy a car and pay it off. I have an incredibly successful little business. I have the most amazing staff, people that are just, it's amazing what's happened because we've created this space that has attracted the community and people to it. That it's just amazing. It's almost like it's my own meeting. It's like the restaurant has become like a beacon of like inspiration for me and for my staff and for the people that come there. It's just this most amazing place. It has an incredible energy around it, and you know, it's very hard work, and we all work incredibly hard. I mean, yesterday we did like 350 people, and it was just a 15-hour day. But just the amazing thing that's coming out of it is just this incredible relationship with people. And I remember Don saying to me something right in the beginning about opening this restaurant, that I should never go into it if my motive wasn't right. And I made sure in the very beginning that my motive with regards to this opportunity was to be of service. Was to be of service to the community, to myself, to my staff, just to be of service, to offer good service, to be honest, to be integrous, and to work really hard and to love what we do and to work with passion. And that journey over the last year, the restaurant's just turned a year on the 14th of May, and it's just climbing, it's just growing and growing and growing by the day. And it's just, my recovery has just brought me so many gifts in that sense. When it comes to the other aspect, the main aspect of my recovery, meetings and my program, it's taken me a long time to finish my program, and I understand that it's taken me a long time because, I've got busy and I've made my restaurant, in many ways, I made my restaurant my priority, But I never picked up. I haven't picked up in the 2 years. I have, kept in contact with my sponsor, and I have been doing my Step 11s up until I turned 2 now, which I have been slacking off on. I have joined a home group in Howick West, and I do go to meetings up. But it has been difficult for me, I haven't found a balance in my life. But I'm very happy. I need to, obviously prioritize my recovery, because without my recovery, I wouldn't be in this position that I'm in. But a funny thing has happened to me since I turned 2 now. I've started realizing that I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for this program. And I've started realizing that this program is my priority and has to be my priority. These 12 steps are the most amazing gift I've ever been given in my life, because they've given me an insight into myself and into creating an awareness in me that, like, if I'm dishonest to someone or I lose my temper or something, I actually get physically ill. Like, I can't actually deal with myself when I go home from work after a long day because I've done something wrong. And these are the gifts that this program has given me. They've given me these insights and these awarenesses into wanting to be a better person. But I can't do it on my own. I mean, I can't take on this restaurant and think that like it's all me, which is what I have been doing for this past year. I have been getting lost in like, resenting others because I know better and like trying to make a success of it on my own. There is no doing it on my own, There is doing it through this program, though. There is being able to find serenity and happiness and joy through this program. And I've started coming back to that, I've started finding that again. This program is an amazing journey, The first year was like a real pink cloud for me of building my foundation and finding recovery and really getting into it. So much so that I became obsessed with my recovery. And then the second year came and I started getting a little bit complacent. And now the restaurant's really succeeding, and I started like finding things outside of myself again. But still going to meetings, but just not making it my priority. And I think that's been the biggest learning curve for me in my second year of recovery is learning this complacency and coming to see what it is and drifting away from my recovery in a sense, But like now, coming back to it again, and I'm very grateful for that because I'm dedicated to this program. I'm dedicated to my life in recovery. I really am. But I also understand that like I'm an alcoholic and I've got loads of defects, and I need to experience these defects. I've got to, otherwise I'm not going to come back into my recovery and into my serenity and finding my true priorities. And yeah, that's really my journey in a nutshell. It's incredible. I have a very inquiring mind now. Since I've been conscious, I'm stimulated by so many things. I just love passion. I love doing everything with passion now because I'm conscious now. I'm able to like learn how to run a business. Like I've taught myself how to run a business in the last year, and it's been amazing. I haven't had to go to university. It's been like the school of hard knocks, and it's been like it's worked. And I love studying science and physics, and I love spirituality, and I love like being conscious enough to get insights into these things. And it's just an amazing experience. Like my sobriety is like the greatest gift I could ever have asked for. At the age of 42, it took me 40 years to get to this point. A point where I always wanted to be, but never knew how to get to, because I was so lost in myself and so lost in like looking for things outside of myself through alcohol and drugs that it's just I don't regret it. Like the promises say, we'll never regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. I'm very grateful for my experiences and my past. It's been a colorful story. It's been an amazing journey. Hey? I smile at all of it. Hey? Like they're the parts that I hurt my family and my loved ones and my dad and that always bring like some sadness to me. But the reality is that I can't change them, and I can only do what I can do now. Even if I don't say my step 11s to every night to Don and that, I know that I'm doing wrong. I know that I'm making mistakes. I know that I'm acting on my defects. But the reality is that a single action can change everything. And those are the kind of insights that I get through this program. And I'm trying. I'm still a baby in recovery. I've got a lot on my plate. But I'm grateful to be here, and I'm conscious. And, I love being in this splash of life. I wouldn't have it anyway. I do not want to pick up. I don't think about picking up. I'm not interested in picking up. I don't want alcohol at my restaurant. We haven't even looked at a license. I just don't want it in my life. I want to be of service. I want to grow as an alcoholic in recovery. I want to be able to help others. I want to be able to help myself, and I'm able to do that consciously now, step by step, one day at a time, because that's the reality of this program. It's not easy, It's not like some fairy dust that's going to like make everything better because I've done the 12 steps. I'm very grateful to finish the 12 steps, and I'm glad I finished it because it was weighing heavily on me. But it's a work in progress, and I've really come to understand what one day at a time means, because every single day is different. I can't carry my problems from yesterday into today, because there's nothing I can do about them. I've got to deal with them yesterday, I've got to make amends on them yesterday, and I've got to move on from them, and that's the bottom line. And that's what this program teaches me to do. And the insight into that is that it really works. It really works, because every single day is a new opportunity, it's a new challenge, it's a new opportunity to be grateful. It's a new opportunity to get closer to the God of my understanding, which is a journey. And I love that. And Don's taught me a lot about unconditional love and the beauty of acceptance. And I cherish that, it's an amazing program, and if you are at the start of this journey, I wish you all the strength and all the best, and I hope that you can find what I find and what I have found and what I'm constantly finding. The more I try to be aware of myself and the program and do the best I can, the more and more I'm surprised by the beauty and the expanding potential that I have within myself and with those around me. So I thank you for letting me share here today, and I hope that all of you in this room grow from strength to strength, one day at a time. Thanks.